Hi, I'm Mickey Zeta. This is Wednesday Night, Live with Mickey. I'm here in front of our fireplace because we're still in Connecticut, obviously. And guess what? We are at the start of the fourth nor'easter in like less than 2 weeks in this area. So the first week we were here, the first day we were here was the first one. We've been here just over a week, and here comes the second one. So we're hopeful it doesn't get too bad, but we've got a nice fire going in our house to make sure that it stays nice and warm if we do lose electricity. So that's my story about what's going on right here. What I want to talk to you about tonight is I've had a lot of questions this week from women who are living in abuse and some who are out of abuse. And hi, Nels, good to have you here. And the questions are about what are the phases of abuse, what are the types of domestic abuse, and is there a cycle? Is there a particular cycle? So the best way for me to answer that is to use my own experience as an example. And you know, it's some of you have heard my story before. I'm just going to try to go through it really quickly, but it's the best way I can think of to explain what domestic abuse is all about. So the types of abuse are, of course, control. And then there's financial control. That's a type of abuse. Then there's, hi Keith McClellan, glad to have you here. So, all right, I'm going to start over. There's control, and there's financial abuse where the abuser controls all the money. And then there's emotional, which takes all different levels, and control can be considered emotional abuse, but mostly it's undermining you as a person. It's undermining and making things nasty for you in your home. Pretty soon you totally lose who you are. So that's emotional abuse. And then there's physical, and physical abuse includes a lot of different things. Mostly though, it's physical bruises. It goes beyond emotional abuse. Now, you've probably heard me say before, in my opinion, emotional abuse is so much worse than physical abuse because emotional abuse attacks your brain and your heart and your soul. It's every cell of your body is impacted by emotional abuse. Now, physical abuse is pretty horrible, but those bruises on your skin and on your body, they'll heal. But anyway, and there's of course there's lots of levels of physical abuse. I was not in a situation where weapons were used. I was never in fear of a weapon being used against me. We didn't have guns and knives and that kind of thing in the house. That's a level of abuse I have not experienced, and I cannot imagine what it is, but that's another level of physical abuse. So I'm just going to go through my story really fast to show you, to give you examples of how insidious domestic abuse is. So I started dating my abuser when I was about 17, and we got married when I was 18. In that time, what happened with me was, hi Teresa, glad to have you here. So what happened for me was, my primary example is that we'd be driving down the road, and we'd be going pretty fast in his new car. You know, I was all like impressed with who this charismatic, handsome young man was, and he was a college guy, and he was on a track for a terrific career, and that was like the sparkles in my eyes. I was in love with the idea of romantic love. I was 17. So we're driving down the street, and he's just, let's go with the steering wheel. And he says, okay, you better steer. And I'm like, what do you mean I better steer? I don't even have a driver's license. What do you mean I better steer? I thought it was a joke. It was not a joke. And it escalated. We'd be driving down the freeway, for Pete's sake, down the freeway, and the car would start to move one way or the other out of the lane, and I would grab the wheel. So, hi Audrey, glad to have you here. So what happened, it was strictly control, and why didn't I just say, ha ha, this is not good, I'm out of here? But I didn't do that for a million reasons. So that's how it started. So even before we were married, I was under control of this man. He had the power, he had the control, and I let him get that because I didn't walk away. I didn't say no. So then we got married, and the emotional abuse continued, and it grew, and it was silly things like which car I could drive. The car that I drove was not in very good condition, but he couldn't take it on the military base because it wasn't in very good condition. So he drove the good car, and I had to make do with this funky car that was about to fall apart, and it was a stick shift. That's another thing. There's another example of emotional abuse. he made me get up at 11 o'clock at night because that's when he decided that he was going to teach me how to drive a stick shift. And it was winter time. It was cold outside. The car was loud as heck. So we're driving around town, me, jumping and bumping. And, I didn't know how to drive a stick shift, but that's when he decided I was going to learn. And that's how it worked. So there's another good example of emotional abuse. Well, for me, that continued for a number of years. We were married about 5 years before the physical abuse started. Oh, I forgot to mention financial. As soon as we were married, all the money that I made, not that I had made a lot of money in the very beginning, but my checks were turned over to him immediately. And he handled all the money. And I was doled out just a little tiny bit. And it pretty much continued that way. Even when I had great jobs and I made a lot of money, even when we owned businesses and I was just as involved in building those businesses as he was, I turned all the money over to him and he controlled it. He decided what was going to get paid, what was going to get saved. Yes, he was better with money than I was, but that's not the point. I was like allowed $20 a week. Now that was 1968, but still $20 a week. And I had to account for every penny I was spending. So that is financial abuse. Then it got into physical. One day, we've been married about 5 years, and we were at his grandmother's house. His parents were both home. His grandparents were there, and his parents were visiting as we were too. And I was asked by his parents to tell him that he needed to do something for his aunt. And when I did that, he went ballistic. He just went crazy, kind of. And that's the first time I was physically abused. He was yelling and screaming, and he was throwing me around the room. And there's no way, it was not a big house, there's no way his grandparents and his parents didn't hear what was going on. They had to have heard it. But they never said a word when we came out of the room. Well, in the morning, I had bruises on my arms where he had grabbed me and tossed me around. And I decided, it was summertime, and I decided that if I wore a sleeveless shirt and people could see, his family could see what he had done to me, that they would come to my defense, that they would say something. Well, guess what? They didn't. Not one word was spoken. So the message to me was very, very clear. Do not embarrass this family. Do not embarrass our son. Do not talk about the way that you're being treated. Now, I guess I could have at that point said, you know what, I am out of here. There were many times before that when I could have said, I'm out of here. But I was like the frog in the, you put a frog in cold water and you turn the heat on, and pretty soon the frog is cooked. Well, I felt cooked. I felt like he controlled everything, and I couldn't make it on my own. I couldn't leave. Well, I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong, but that's what I believed. And the physical abuse continued for a lot of years. In fact, I'm going to say, like many people who live in domestic abuse, I did not accept that I was actually an abused spouse for like 24 years. 24 years. I made excuses for his behavior. I accepted responsibility for his anger. I did everything I could think of to keep that marriage going because I believed in marriage. I thought, and he wasn't bad all the time. And you'll hear other domestic abuse people say, but he wasn't bad all the time. No, he wasn't. But even one example of what I've told you should have been enough for me to say, I am gone. And I didn't do that. I didn't do that. And there are people listening to this video who didn't do that either. And some of you are probably still living with the people treating you the way I'm describing. So those are the cycles of abuse, and those are my examples. I'm going to tell you that there comes a time for everybody. Please, God, let it be for everybody who's living in abuse. There comes a time when you say, you know what? That's it. I've had enough. And I promised myself over and over and over for years and years, the next time I'm bruised, I'm gone. The next time I'm bruised, I'm gone. But I didn't leave. I didn't leave. And then one day in November, about 15 or 16 years ago, I was home early, and I was sitting in my favorite chair. I was enjoying a cup of coffee and looking out at the beautiful fall leaves reflecting on the lake. It was a beautiful, calm, and spectacular afternoon. And suddenly, in the door came my ex-husband. And I don't remember if he was furious when he came in or if he became furious at seeing me sitting there in the chair. I don't know what it was, but he went ballistic again. And not that there was a lot of times between the first and this time I'm describing now. But what I decided was, as he was gripping my biceps and he was slamming me in that chair and he was screaming in my ears, I said to myself, this is it. This is it. And for those of you who've lived in abuse and decided that you're not going to stay, hi, John. Oh my gosh, John, I'm so glad to see you. I hope you're feeling much better. So it was at that point that I said, I'm done. I am out of here. And it took me 4 more months. It took me 4 months to leave. But at that moment, at that instant, and anybody who lived in abuse who's gotten out, you have an instant that you'll never, ever forget, because that's when you said, I'm done. I am done with this. And that, of course, is the most dangerous time of anybody's relationship. If you're living with physical abuse, women who leave physical abusers are 70 times more likely to be killed when they leave. So what I did, and I didn't know that statistic, but I knew it was dangerous, so I left a note. I planned this note for a long time, and I wrote it, and I left it. And I worked with him all that day, but I knew that I was leaving that evening. And I did. I got out, and I knew I was never going back. So those are the cycles. Those are examples from my personal experience. And without examples, it's hard to understand. What is emotional abuse? What is financial abuse? What is physical abuse? Physical abuse, most of us know. And here's the rest of what's going on. You are seeing perfect examples of, hi, Lori, glad to have you here. You'll see perfect examples right in the news right now about collective collusion. And that means that people know that abuse is going on, but they don't talk about it. It's similar to what happened with my in-laws and with my husband's grandparents. Don't talk about it. The message is very clear. We don't want to know. Collective collusion means that entire society, our society, does not want to know about domestic abuse. And that is, I'm sorry, that's sick. It doesn't make any sense. 1 in 3 women live in domestic abuse at some point in their lives. 1 in 3. So every single one of us knows someone, is connected to someone, has someone in their family, their best friend, somebody you know lives in domestic abuse. So I'm encouraging you, don't do anything that's going to be dangerous for them. Don't encourage them to do anything that'll be dangerous to their lives or to their being or to their kids. But just speak to those people. You know what abuse feels like. You know what it is. Speak to those people and say, I get it. I know what's going on. And if you need help or you want to just talk, I'm here. That's all you have to say. Don't encourage anybody to leave. Nobody is going to leave abuse till they are ready. Nobody is going to leave because you encourage them or anyone else encourages them. They will only leave because they are ready. Now, here's the other thing. If we don't embrace personal growth, if we don't change who we are inside right now while we're living with abuse, when we leave, we will go back. If we don't go back to that abuser, we will go to some guy who is just like him. It's a different face, it's a different body, it's the same person. It's the same abuser. So please, do personal growth. Embrace personal growth. You have to do that. If you don't change, nothing changes. I hope that you hear those words. If you don't change, nothing changes. So if you know my story, Lori, I know you get it, and it's true. So if you know my story, you know that after I got divorced, I put myself in what I called the repair shop for 5 years. I worked on me because I knew if I didn't change, I would either go back to the husband that I left, or I would find another one just like him, just like him. Think about the people you know who keep marrying alcoholics, or they keep marrying drug addicts, or they keep marrying abusers. What's the common denominator? What is the common denominator? It's you. It's that person who's selecting those abusers, those addicts, those drunks. You're doing it. So you have some responsibility there. I know that's hard to hear. But you have some responsibility. You can always leave. Don't do it haphazardly. Don't do it in a way that will be dangerous to you or to your family or to your children, but do it. Begin the personal growth. And when you do that, when you start reading books, hire a coach, listen to my podcasts and listen to my live videos and read books and take webinars, do whatever you can get your hands on to teach yourself that the things that you believe about yourself now are not true. They're not true. You are an amazing and strong and smart woman Those of us who are attracted to abusers, we have huge hearts. We have huge hearts. And that's part of the problem. We think that we can fix people. We can't fix people. I could turn this into a 1-hour seminar. I could just keep talking about, this is my passion, this is my belief, and the key point of what I've talked about here tonight is personal growth, personal development. So make it a decision. Decide that tomorrow you are going to go on Amazon or you're going to go to the public library. Find some books that will help you reprogram your brain. That is what you have to do. You have to reprogram your brain. And thank you, Lori. I really appreciate your validation. This is my passion. This is my mission. And man, it's so important to me. You know that I was married 34 years to an abuser. I've been out for 15 years before I started speaking my truth. I'm going to say, if you hadn't heard before, I had a counselor. I called him when I was going to start surviving abuse back in May. And he said, Mickey, if you don't speak your truth, he is still in control. You are still allowing him to abuse you. I was like, holy cow, are you kidding me? That is true. That is absolutely the truth. So that's my talk for tonight. I am really, really excited to be able to share this and to share my story. I thank you for being here. For more information, go to my website, survivingabusenetwork.com, survivingabusenetwork.com. You can download other podcasts, you can listen to some other live videos, and there are a lot of blogs there, so check it out, Surviving Abuse Network, and please recommend that to your friends. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be back on Sunday night, 7:30, Sunday night Wine with Mickey. See you then.